Welcome to part 3. Now, I apologize that there, are so many parts and we just don't cover it all in one video, but, we're talking about a very involved topic. The Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, is not a simple character. It's not someone you can simply say one or two words upon and that's it. I mean, there are books, in volumes that are written about this beautiful character. In fact, even those who are not Muslims listed him as being the best in a list of characters, of personalities in the world. He was listed as number 1, right? Even before Jesus. And these are Christians. So if a Christian said Muhammad is the best, then why would he say that? Of course, the Muslim would say that. You can expect that. But for a Christian to say that Muhammad is the best character in history, you should want to know why. So let's take a look now in a little more detail now about the character of the Prophet Muhammad. Let's take a look at a story. There's a book that I wrote entitled How to Become the Best Christian. You see, because I was a Christian. My mother raised me as a Christian. And so I wanted to become the best Christian I can possibly be. So this story talks about my path of trying to become the best Christian, right? So let's take a look at an excerpt from this book, all right? Let's take a look at an excerpt from this book. Here it says on page 26, in one report, Muhammad saw a Jewish woman carrying a heavy load and helped her by carrying it for her. A Jewish woman. The man you say is a terrorist that kills Jews and Christians just because they're Jews and Christians, right? If that was the case, there wouldn't be a single Jew or Christian alive under Muslim rule in Muslim society. But there were many. And so listen to this report about what happened. Muhammad, he didn't stay on a throne. He didn't stay in a special house. No, he even slept on the floor. Even though he had the ability to sit on a throne. When he sat amongst his companions, he didn't sit higher than them or in front of them. He sat amongst them on the ground. He ate with his fingers. And he didn't, put himself above others. Right? So this is that man that you're talking about. He had the ability when the money started coming into, at first it was poor, the Muslims were very poor. But even when the riches and wealth started coming, he refused it. So if this was a man seeking worldly gain, why would he refuse it? And he continued sitting on the ground, eating with his fingers, and lying on the ground. Right? This was that man that you're talking about, that you're attacking. And listen, he saw a Jewish woman carrying a heavy load, and he took it from her. Mind you, she didn't know who he was. Okay? He took it from her and carried it. She had never seen Muhammad. She heard about him, and she was saying bad things about him. He's a terrible man. And for those of you who don't know the Prophet Muhammad, that's why you would also talk bad about him, because you don't know him. Right? So why, remember with every prophet, Jesus, Moses, every disbeliever hated prophets. So they always lied about them. Didn't they lie about Jesus? Didn't they lie about Moses? Yeah, they told many lies. He's a sorcerer. He's crazy. He's a liar. Right? They did this about all of the prophets, right? So why would you choose to listen to the lies of those who hate Islam and you don't listen to the truth of those who love Islam? And there are those who are not Muslims also saying these beautiful things about Islam. So you should not be drawn towards any bad thing that you hear, but you should be seeking the truth. Right? So listen from the Muslims. And then check the history to see if it's true or not. He took the load from her, right? And he was carrying it for her. She didn't know that he was in fact Muhammad, the one that the Muslims say is a prophet. Therefore, she wanted to repay him for his help by giving him some advice. Some sincere advice as far as she was concerned. She told him not to follow that man called Muhammad because he's a liar and a bad man. This is what she told him. She didn't know he was Muhammad. So Muhammad then replied saying, I am Muhammad. SubhanAllah. May the glory of Almighty God, be praised. Said, I am Muhammad. She was so shocked that she immediately declared her belief in Islam. You see? So when you see the goodness of this man Muhammad, he didn't only treat good the Muslims, he treated good those who were not Muslim too. He didn't ask money from her. Right? He carried her load because he saw this old woman carrying a heavy load. This is Islam. This was the character of the Prophet Muhammad, and peace and blessings be upon him. In fact, history shows anywhere Islam spread, the Christians and Jews were freely allowed to continue practicing their religion there. If this were not the case, we would not find many Christians at all still living in places that were previously occupied by the Muslims, whose family lineage dates back to the very time of Islam reaching their countries. You see? So, if the Muslims killed every single Christian, would you find Christians in Egypt? If that was their policy, to kill every single Christian and Jew, why are there still Christians in Egypt? Why are there still Christians in other Muslim countries, if that was their policy? Because it's not a part of Islam and it's not their policy. That's a very good question for you to answer. Okay? Now, let's continue. Now, at this point, it seems that we should take a closer look at how the Muslims treated the people that they ruled over. Okay? Because we talked about the Prophet Muhammad, how he treated the people, right? In fact, there were many cases where the Prophet was spoken about badly even during his lifetime. People pulled his beard. A Jew came and pulled his beard, right? And he didn't get angry, right? The man wanted some charity. And so the Prophet Muhammad said, give him some, even though he pulled his beard. And the man became Muslim. Why? Because he knew the Jews who study their religion and the Christians who study their book, their religion, know that there's a prophet that's supposed to come after Jesus. But they look for the characteristics. And the characteristic of this prophet, Muhammad, is supposed to be one who's very tolerant. Right? And so with him pulling his beard and saying that he didn't attack him, he didn't punch him, he didn't order the people to kill him, he knew that this was the prophet that they were looking for as a Jew, right? So he became Muslim. So many Jews and many Christians in the past became Muslim just from seeing the character of the prophet, because that's what every prophet was foretold about from their characteristics. Christ is not the name of Jesus, but they were looking for the Christ, and when they realized Jesus was the Christ, that's when he became known as Jesus Christ, right? So John the Baptist, Elijah, they were looking for Elijah. And so when they saw the characteristics, that's when they knew that John the Baptist was Elijah. The same thing for the Prophet Muhammad. They're looking for one like Moses, right? They're looking for one that will not speak of his own behalf, but will speak whatever he hears from the Creator, that he shall speak. And so on another video, but not this one, we're going to get into detail with why is Muhammad that prophet like Moses? How is he the prophet like Moses? How is he the comforter, the one that Jesus said, I must go away? For if I go not away, the comforter will not come unto you. But if I go, I shall send him unto you. Right? And he shall say all that he hears. Right? Right? So, from the Creator. Right? He shall say all that he hears from the Creator. Right? So we will get into that at another time. Right now we're dealing with the beautiful character of the Prophet Muhammad. Was he a terrorist? Did he encourage terrorists? So the best thing to do after looking at the teacher, look at his students. Because what they learned from him is what they should practice. So the best of students of the Prophet were the ones that were living during his lifetime. We call them the companions, like of Jesus, his disciples. But of the Muslims, he even called his disciples, he called them his companions. See? So he didn't even have arrogance where he's putting himself above his disciples, the ones who he is teaching. He called them his companions. So they're his friends, you see? So they are there with him on the same level and plane. He's been appointed the prophet by Almighty God, but he didn't put himself above the people. All right, so let's look at his companions and see how they dealt with the people. Okay? Now, when we say that, let's take a look at a story here. After the death, and from my book as well, this is on page 27. At this point, right, let's look at a story about after Muhammad passed away, because Muhammad did pass away. He lived to be 63 years old, right? And so his companions had to continue on the message and continue on the teachings and the following. So after his death, approximately 25 years later, the Muslim capital was moved to Medina, to the city of Kufa, which became the new capital of the Islamic government. Their people from all over the world used to gather in order to get the benefit of the knowledge. It was like, you know, the center of knowledge. People used to come and study there, right? So on one of those days, two men came across each other in the vicinity of the city. One of them was Ali. Ali is what? The cousin of the Prophet Muhammad. Ali also married his daughter, Fatima. Ali is also the fourth ruler of Islam after the Prophet Muhammad passed away. So shouldn't he be a perfect or good example of what he learned? Yes, because he was very close to the Prophet from very little, when he was young. He even was raised by the Prophet in his household. So let's listen. These two were walking together. A Christian with Ali, and Ali was the ruler. But again, this Christian didn't know he was the ruler. He didn't have no special bodyguards. He didn't have no special vehicle to take him to the capital. He was walking in the street by himself without guards. Right? Can you imagine a ruler walking in the streets nowadays without guards? What would happen? So many people hate rulers, right? They have so many enemies. But when you're just with people, then your amount of enemies decreases. When you're truthful and just and fair with people. And this is why Ali was able to walk in the street without bodyguards. And a Christian met him in the road, and they were walking together. Okay? So then they mutually agreed to accompany each other for a while, talking to each other so as not to get tired while traveling. Eventually they reached a point in the road where the road split. So the Christian had to go this way, and Ali had to continue this way. So what happened? Ali came and followed him a part of his way. So the man asked him, well, you know, why are you coming with me here? Don't you have to go there? He said, we were taught by our Prophet Muhammad that when two people travel together, one has a right on the other. So I'm coming with you to discharge your right upon me in this life. And the man was so astonished by the character and the disposition of a Muslim that he became Muslim. He said, wow, this is what Islam teaches you? And he found out that this was the ruler of Islam during that time, which made him even more astonished. This was Islam. And then let's look at another example with Ali. There was someone, right, a Jew, that had taken one of his armor, right? And Ali wanted to take it back. Now he's the ruler. He easily could have threw him in jail, right, and taken his armor back. But no, what did he do? He went to court, right, made a petition to get his property back, just like anybody else. Can you imagine a president, you know, if someone stole something of his, him going to court to prove that it's his? You wouldn't imagine something like this. So he went to court, and the judge asked for his witnesses. So he had one person who was a servant in his house that used to fix food and clean the house, a servant. And he had, also his son. So when they went to court, the judge dismissed the case. He said, because your son may answer in favor of you, right? May be persuaded because you're his father. And your servant also, because you may fire him or punish him or something. So he discarded that case, dropped the case, threw it out of court. So the man, when he saw the justice of Islam, even against the ruler of that land, he took Shahada and became Muslim. Look at these beautiful examples. You see, even against a Jew, he lost in a Muslim court. So the man became Muslim. And so Ali gave him his armor and gave him more things as well. It's the justice of Islam. All right, let's take a look at one more example. One beautiful example. There's another ruler of Islam, but this is later, right? His name is Umar. They may say Omar. Most non-Muslims say Omar. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. During his lifetime as a ruler, right, he implemented Islam the way it's supposed to be implemented, according to the way the Prophet taught him, from the Quran, and from the example of the Prophet, and from the example of those rightly guided followers of the Prophet. Okay? So one day his army, the Muslim army, right, Islam was spreading very quickly, right? Very quickly. And the way I told you, a Muslim, before he goes into a land, he must give them a choice to either accept Islam, the ruler, given the tyrant, that tyrant, the ruler. Can you imagine Pharaoh, and you're giving him choices? Islam went to the tyrant and offered him choices. You see, a tyrant, you would think a tyrant should be killed, right? But no, Islam gave him choices. Accept Islam, right? Or pay the jizya, right, the taxes, and you'll be protected by us. Or we will fight you to eliminate the oppression and the tyranny that you are inflicting on your people. Right? So these were the choices. But one time the commander of the Muslim army did not give that choice to a land. He went in and captured the land without giving them these three choices. So after they took over the land, at first the priests and the monks, they weren't Christians, but they had priests and monks who worshiped idols. They were scared to go out of the house because their land was conquered. So they started by sending the children outside. And the children were not harmed by the Muslims. The children would come back happy. In fact, the Muslims used to help the children to buy things they wanted to buy. So eventually the people said, oh, it's safe, we can come out. So they started coming out. And then there was a dispute between a Muslim and one of these people. And so they went to court, to the Muslim court, to complain. And when they went to court, the Muslim judge judged in favor of the person who was not Muslim, the pagan, who was not Muslim, over the Muslim. So the Muslim was to be punished for a non-Muslim. See the justice of Islam? And so when these priests and monks heard about this, they said they must have a just ruler. If they made a decision like this against the Muslim in favor of us, they must have a just ruler. So they told one of their people, they wanted anybody to go see the ruler and tell that ruler that your army came in by surprise. They didn't give us a choice to pay taxes, jizya, or to accept Islam, or the choice of war. They didn't give us any choices. They just bum rushed us, as we say. They just came in and attacked us and took over our land. So one person agreed, and he traveled to Damascus at this time where the Muslim ruler was. And when he got there, he saw this big, what looked like a beautiful castle. He said, this must be where the ruler is at. And he didn't see any guards on the door. It seemed very strange. A ruler and no guards on the door. He saw people going in and coming out. This is very strange. He went in there and saw people going down and prostrating on their forehead, like Jesus did. Remember, when you read the Bible, you're going to hear that Jesus fell upon his face and prayed. So he saw this. And mind you, he wasn't a Christian, he was a pagan. And so he was looking for the ruler. And after the prayer was over, he asked him, he said, where's the ruler? Where's the leader? And they said, you didn't see him? He was leading the prayer. He said, prayer? What is that? He said, what you saw us doing. This is prayer. We pray to the one God, you know, the creator of the heavens and the earth. What is God? So he was explaining to him all of these things. And he said, well, I want to see the ruler because there's some injustice that was taking place in Samarkand. This was the land of the name of the land. You know, so they sent him to the ruler. Now imagine, after the man found his way to the ruler, he looked and he saw an old house. Old house that looked like it was about to fall down. And the man was patching the wall. An old man. So he went back to the man and said, what, are you making fun of me? I went there where you told me to go and I saw an old man patching a hole on the wall, patching a wall. What, are you making fun of me? He said, no, that's our ruler. So the ruler didn't have a rich palace. He didn't have a big white house with lots of wealth and chairs and the best of money and wealth. No. In fact, he was patching his wall himself with his own hands. So when he took him back, he said, yes, this is our ruler. So the man was kind of scared to approach the ruler because, you know, he remembers how his monks and priests, they couldn't just approach them directly because they were like on a pedestal. You just can't approach the leaders like that. You know, just like now, they'll be surrounded by guards and, you know, you'll be escorted at the point of a gun or a knife, right? So, no, he was able to go and speak to the ruler. And he said, doesn't Islam tell you people that before you can go into their land and take it over, that you had to give them choices? He said, yes, this is true. He said you have to give them the choice to accept Islam or not, give the leader a choice to accept Islam or not, or to pay the taxes, the jizya, or to fight, the notice of war, right? So he said, no, they didn't give us any of these choices, and they just came in by surprise and took over the land. So Umar ibn Abdulaziz, Omar, right, he was shocked. But of course, he had to listen to both sides. He's a just ruler. He couldn't get upset and say you're lying. He couldn't get upset and just punish, you know, the Muslims either. So he established a day in court. So the leader, the commander of the war, of the Muslim army, was summoned to come to court. And these people, their leader, was summoned to come to court. So he heard both sides. And he asked the commander, is this true? They're accusing you of going in without warning. He said, yes, this is true. Now look, here's a leader and he's telling the truth too. He's not hiding up in line, no, I didn't do that, he's lying. And we said, yes, I did. And he said, why did you do this? He said, because this is a great big nation, right? And for us to be able to go in, remember Muslims were always a small number, but they were able to defeat great numbers of tyrants and rulers with a small number of people. So they had a small number. He said, if we went in not by surprise, we would be slaughtered. Many of our people would have died. But if we caught them by surprise, we had a chance of winning. And he said, Islam does not enjoin that. He said, Islam is not about conquering lands. It's about spreading justice. It's about spreading the truth. It's not about conquering lands. Right? So the judge judged against the Muslim and said, because you disobeyed what Allah said in the Quran, and you disobeyed the example of the Prophet, and you disobeyed what Islam enjoins, you go out of that land, all of your army, and all of the Muslims, and return the land to that people. SubhanAllah, have you ever seen something like this in the history of humanity? I'm not just talking about the Muslims. Have you ever seen such a thing happen in the history of humanity? Find me one example just like that. You will never, ever, ever find an example of people who took over a land and then left them willingly. So when these people saw that they were picking up their weapons and taking their clothes and leaving because the Muslim was in the wrong and that the Muslim judge ruled against him and that goes against Islam, the people were astonished. What kind of Islam is this? What type of people are these? What type of prophet is this? The people began to cry about the justice in Islam. people began to cry about the truthfulness in Islam, even against themselves. And this is what Islam enjoys. Islam, the Quran says, stand up for justice, even against yourself. That's what the Quran says, right? In the Quran, it says that. In Surah An-Nisa, if you want to look it up, the chapter of the women, the 135th verse, that you are to stand up for justice, even against yourself. So if I'm wrong, then I'm to accept that I'm wrong, to say that I'm wrong, and to be ready to accept the punishment as a result. So these people, when they saw this, they begged the Muslims to stay. They begged the Muslims not to leave, because for the first time in their life they saw justice under the Muslim rule. And they became Muslim by hundreds. The majority of these people became Muslim willingly, because when the tyrant was removed, they saw the justice of Islam. They didn't forbid them to practice their religion. They didn't punish them or kill them. They removed the oppression. And that's what Islam does. Removes the oppression from the people and gives the people the choice. That's what Islam is for. Islam is for the people. It removes the tyrants from above them. We're going to pause here, because I think this is enough for you to sit and think about and be astonished with the justice and beauty of Islam. And then we will continue after this about the beauty of Islam and the beauty of that man you attacked, the Prophet of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad. May his peace and blessings be upon him.